The battle was over. At least, that's what the Zalith Dominion believed. Their fleet hung in the void, a wall of titanic warships stretching across the blackness of space. Thousands of pulse cannons cooled, their barrels still glowing from the destruction they had rained upon Earth's defenses. The ruined remnants of humanity's last fleet drifted as lifeless wreckage, metal husks torn apart by plasma fire and kinetic bombardments. Admiral Vorquin, supreme commander of the Dominion's war effort, stood at the command deck of his flagship, Vrexel's Wrath, watching the ruins unfold on the holographic display. His mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "It is done," he said, his deep voice echoing through the bridge. The Terrans resisted, but resistance is meaningless against the Dominion. The officers at his side bowed slightly in acknowledgement. They too believed victory was complete. Humanity was finished. Then something changed. At first it was a subtle shift. A silence. A wrongness in the void. Then the sensors screamed. Something was coming. 10 minutes earlier, deep within the ruined heart of the Sol system, Commander Elias Voss stood on a fractured deck of what remained of the USS Revenant, humanity's most advanced warship. Sparks flickered in the dying light, and blood pooled near the control consoles. Half his crew was dead. The other half wasn't far behind. Yet his eyes burned, not with defeat but with purpose. The enemy thought they had won. That was their mistake. "Status report," he growled, voice hoarse from smoke and blood. A broken, half-functioning AI responded, its voice fractured. "Primary systems, offline. Weapons, disabled. Life support, critical. Hull integrity, 7%. Voss wiped the blood from his face. He barely felt the pain. Around him, the last of his crew struggled to rise. They were exhausted, beaten, wounded, but none of them had surrendered. None of them would. "We're not dead yet," he muttered, pressing a command into the shattered console. A hidden subroutine activated. Deep within the core of the Revenant, something awakened. Something humanity had never dared to use before. Back aboard the Zalith fleet, panic spread. "Admiral," a sensor technician shouted. "We have incoming signatures, massive energy spikes." Vorquin's mandibles flared in irritation. "From where?" The officer hesitated. His eyes were wide with confusion and terror. "From everywhere." Above Earth, in the dark void of space, the impossible happened. The ruined human ships, the ones floating lifelessly, dead and gutted, began to move. One by one, their shattered forms ignited with blue-white energy, hulls knitting themselves back together, weapon systems coming online where none should have been functional. The Revenant, which had drifted like a corpse, now radiated power. Its engines roared to life, and a deep, ominous red glow pulsed from its underbelly. The Zalith Dominion had destroyed the fleet. But humanity had prepared for this moment. They hadn't built just ships. They had built Revenants, weapons designed for war after death. Voss's voice crackled over an open frequency. "You thought we were done?" He laughed, a sound filled with both pain and vengeance. "Now we get serious." The void erupted. Thousands of dead human ships came back to life, faster, stronger, and more ruthless than ever. A new war had begun. And this time humanity wasn't holding back. Admiral Vorquin had fought countless wars. He had crushed rebellions, burned planets, and dismantled entire civilizations. Never, not once, had he felt fear. Until now. The impossible was unfolding before his very eyes. The wreckage of humanity's fleet, ships he had personally ordered annihilated, was moving. No, not just moving. Fighting. The Revenant, humanity's last dreadnought, should have been little more than a smoldering ruin. Instead, it burned like a newborn star, its structure reforging itself with eerie, pulsating energy. The red glow beneath its hull deepened, the kind of light that promised nothing but wrath. And it wasn't alone. Hundreds of human warships, thought to be lifeless wrecks, were reactivating. Their shattered hulls were being reconstructed by some unknown force, their weapons cycling back to operational status. Then came the worst part. They weren't piloted. The Dominion scanners screamed warnings, trying to make sense of the insanity. No human life signs detected. No crew activity aboard any vessel. Yet the ships moved with purpose. The Dominion officers stood frozen in disbelief. "Admiral," one of his captains whispered, voice trembling. What are they?" Vorquin's mandibles twitched, his throat tightening. "Ghosts." Aboard the USS Revenant, Commander Voss grinned through bloody teeth. It had worked. The Last Stand Protocol, a project humanity had deemed too extreme, too dangerous. The Zalith had forced their hand. All systems online, the fractured AI reported, its voice a chilling monotone. Revenant-class warforms engaged. Crew unnecessary. Battle mode, autonomous retaliation engaged. Voss forced himself upright, eyes burning with grim satisfaction. They wanted to wipe out humanity? Fine. Then they'd fight the part of humanity that never dies. The first human warship struck. A derelict cruiser, its engine still half melted, slammed into a Zalith battleship at full speed. It should have shattered upon impact. Instead, it tore through the Dominion vessel like paper, punching straight through and emerging from the other side, a glowing phantom, unstoppable, unrelenting. More followed. The dead fleet moved with a speed and precision that no organic mind could match. No hesitation. No fear. Just vengeance. The Zalith Navy had been the executioners. Now they were the prey. Panic spread through the Dominion ranks. Open fire. Vorquin roared. Destroy them again. Plasma lances and hypervelocity rounds screamed across the void, striking the Revenant ships. Nothing. Their hulls, somehow denser, faster, impossibly stronger, absorbed the fire, the impacts barely slowing them down. The Revenant itself cut through the Zalith front lines, delivering a single devastating broadside that vaporized an entire battle formation in seconds. The Dominion had never seen anything like it. Admiral, a trembling officer stammered. They are adapting. They're learning our patterns. The truth hit Vorquin like a thunderclap. These were no longer just ships. They were weapons of pure vengeance. And they would not stop. In the heart of the chaos, Voss gave the final command. All forces. His voice was barely more than a growl. Erase the Dominion. And the war truly began. Admiral Vorquin's mandibles trembled as he watched his fleet disintegrate. The Dominion's proud armada, the greatest force in the known galaxy, was being annihilated, not by an enemy fleet of superior numbers, but by the very ships they had already destroyed. The human revenants did not hesitate. They did not falter. They did not break formation. Because they were not alive. They were something worse. Status report. Vorquin snarled, gripping the edge of his command station so hard his claws cracked the metal. The bridge was chaos. Officers scrambled to make sense of the impossible. Multiple squadrons gone. Sir, we've lost. The officer never finished. A ruptured human dreadnought, barely more than a skeletal frame wrapped in flickering red energy, slammed into the Dominion flagship's escort cruiser, shearing it in half in a shower of fire and molten wreckage. The debris spun wildly, taking out 3 more ships in the process. More ghost ships followed. The Dominion's defensive lines crumbled under the onslaught. No amount of tactics, formations, or evasive maneuvers could stop the sheer relentless ferocity of the undead fleet. And then, the worst possible scenario occurred. The Revenant spoke. Transmission incoming. The bridge fell silent. The Dominion officers stared at the comm screen. Admiral Vorquin turned slowly, every instinct in his body screaming that this should not be happening. The screen flickered. Static buzzed. Then, a human face appeared. No, not a human. Not anymore. It was Commander Voss, but his face was wrong. His eyes burned red, not with blood, but with some unnatural glow. His voice echoed, layered, metallic, laced with something far more sinister than hatred. It was certainty. Admiral Vorquin. The Zalith admiral swallowed thickly. You should be dead. The entire crew of the Revenant should be dead. You are a phantom, Vorquin hissed. A glitch. A trick of your failing machines. Voss grinned. We are the storm that never ends. Then the transmission cut. And the Revenant charged. The last stand of the Zalith. Vorquin barely had time to issue the retreat order before the human warform slammed into his command ship's shields. The Dominion's flagship, a behemoth that had once raised entire worlds, was being shredded apart by a single undead warship. But the real horror was what followed. The Revenant spoke again, but this time not just to him. It spoke to all of them. Across every comm channel, every Dominion warship, every last soldier still alive. You wiped out our home. You butchered our people. You thought it was over. The fleet of the dead responded. Every human ship, every ghostly Revenant, every forgotten warform, roared forward, weapons igniting in an unstoppable tidal wave of fire and destruction. Now it is your turn. Burn. The last battle of the Dominion had begun. The nightmare that would never end. Aboard the failing Dominion flagship, Vorquin made a decision he never thought possible. He ran. He didn't care about honor anymore. He didn't care about pride, about the thousands of years his people had ruled unchallenged. He just wanted to live. The admiral and his surviving officers abandoned ship, escaping aboard the last remaining hyperspace pods. As his escape craft drifted away, Vorquin saw the Revenant finally break through the flagship's hull, driving itself deep into the heart of the ship before detonating in a burst of crimson annihilation. The Dominion's proudest warship was gone. His empire was gone. The humans had won. And they had done so from beyond the grave. A message to the galaxy. The Dominion had fallen. But the humans were not done. Before the last of the Zalith fleet vanished into the void, a single transmission was sent to every known world, every species, every empire. The face of Commander Voss appeared again. He was no longer just human. He was something more. Something eternal. His voice echoed across the stars. You thought the fight was over. You thought you had won. You were wrong. Humanity never surrenders. Humanity never dies. Then, as quickly as it began, the transmission cut, leaving the galaxy forever haunted by what they had awakened. Admiral Vorquin drifted in the void, watching the remains of his empire burn. The Dominion's once glorious fleet, a force that had conquered 1,000 worlds, was now nothing but twisted wreckage floating like charred bones in the blackness of space. And the humans? They were still there. The Revenant and its undead warships loomed, their crimson lights pulsing, their weapons still hot from the slaughter. They did not speak. They did not move. They simply waited. For what Vorquin did not know. But he knew one thing. This was no longer war. This was punishment. The final plea. The surviving Zalith commanders scrambled aboard the few remaining Dominion warships, their voices frantic over the comms. Admiral, what do we do? The humans, they're not stopping. We have nothing left to fight with. Vorquin closed his eyes. He had fought in countless wars. He had watched entire species beg for mercy as the Dominion raised their worlds. He had never once considered surrendering. But now he had no choice. He turned to his communications officer. Open a channel. The officer hesitated. To whom, sir? Vorquin clenched his mandibles. To the humans. The officer tapped the controls with shaking claws. The signal blinked green. A moment later they responded. The screen flickered and there was Commander Voss again. His face was no longer fully human. His eyes glowed red, his skin laced with something that looked almost alive, as if the ship itself had fused with him. His voice was cold, unrelenting. You survived. Vorquin's mandibles trembled. Humans, we acknowledge your power. He forced himself to bow his head. Please, no more death. For a moment there was silence. Then Voss spoke. You think this is about power? Vorquin swallowed. Isn't it? Voss's expression darkened. His voice was not just his own anymore. It carried the weight of thousands, an entire lost fleet speaking through him. This is about justice. The red glow around the human fleet intensified. The Zalith officers stiffened in horror as the Revenant moved forward, its shadow consuming the remaining Dominion ships. Your Dominion ended us. We will do the same to you. Vorquin's vision blurred. No. There must be another way. Voss simply stared. Then he said something that froze Vorquin's blood. You had your chance. And the Revenant fired. The erasure of an empire. The void ignited. A blast of pure red energy erupted from the Revenant's core, consuming the last remnants of the Dominion fleet. Vorquin watched his officers disintegrate. His flagship split apart, its hull melting into nothingness. And as the flames reached him, he understood. The humans had not just returned to win a war. They had returned to erase the Dominion. To burn away every trace of its existence. To make sure that no one would ever repeat their mistake. And as the Admiral's body vanished into the crimson void, the Dominion, once the greatest empire in the galaxy, ceased to exist. A warning to the universe. Across the galaxy, thousands of civilizations watched in horror as a final transmission echoed across every known world. The image of Commander Voss appeared one last time. His voice rippled through the cosmos, carrying a message that would be remembered for eternity. This is what happens when you think the fight is over. This is what happens when you do not fear humanity. You should have feared us. The transmission cut. And for the first time in galactic history, every species trembled. The Dominion was dead. But the humans? They had only just begun. Fire, the legend of the Revenant would never fade. Fire, and neither would humanity. Fire, subscribe now or be forgotten like the Dominion.